David.
A little bit late.
Okay. I apologize for not being at Ina Rocha Benucar, which is something I can't do anything about, but she's very close to giving birth, and that's the reason why she didn't want to do this job today. This is the book. It's a very good book, I think. I would say sort of four things about it. Some of these comments agree with what Alina would have said about it. Some of them are not quite the same as what Alina would have said about it. It's a particularly good book, by the way, in the way it elaborates on these country case studies. There's much more in the chapters than appeared on the slides. The first thing I want to say is that this book provides a real theory about fragile states. I mean, we're accustomed to having this fragile states category around in the development business, and it's a really flabby category. It's just based on a particular sort of cut-off point in a set of World Bank statistics. What Seth provides us with is a theory of actually what the problem is in fragile states, what is the cause of fragility, and what needs to be done about it. And you will have different views about whether he's right or he's wrong, and about how new the ideas are, but there's no doubt what he's offering is something which we haven't had until now. It's a theory which says what the problem is. It's a theory which begins to fill the empty box which is being created by the concept of a political settlement in the discussions about fragile states recently. One of the big innovations in thinking about fragile states recently is the proposition you have to have a political settlement if you're going to be successful in building states. But it's an empty box because nobody really has said what a political settlement consists of. They're telling us what it consists of. It consists of a sort of fundamental agreement at the group level about how to share power. And because it's a real theory, it also brings with it some concrete suggestions about what to do differently, which is also something that's been severely lacking. Owners like DFID have moved towards doing sort of political analysis of country contexts to inform what they do, and the information has improved, but an awful lot of that analysis has failed to lead to the donor agencies actually doing something different. And part of the problem has been that people can't imagine exactly what they would do differently. Seth Kaplan is telling us what exactly one should be doing differently. I have some reservations about some of his recommendations, which I'll come back to at the end, but he's at least putting something on the table. Secondly, the book is subtitled A New Paradigm for Development, and it is a real challenge to several paradigms, not just to the prevailing paradigm in the development business. I mean, actually, the development business, if one's speaking about the sort of technical people in the development agencies, they've already moved some way towards recognizing these kinds of issues, and the problem is actually changing the practice. And changing the practice is the problem partly because they're under a political leadership which hasn't quite switched on to these issues yet. But more importantly, I think it's a challenge to the prevailing paradigm in northern countries regarding democratization and its relationship to development. Seth is saying if there's something important about democratization, it's got to do with having a relationship between fundamental groups defined in identity politics terms, and not about the holding of elections, and certainly not about promoting a multi-party competitive political system. Now, you may agree or disagree with that, but it's a real challenge to the prevailing paradigm, not just in Whitehall, but in the street outside. It's a major challenge to the conventional northern view of what you need to do to improve the business climate in poor countries, because he's saying it's not the standard formal institutions which are promoted by the World Bank and others that is going to do the trick in very poor countries. It is in fact the informal institutions which perform the same sorts of roles in creating trust and reducing the transaction costs that investors face. And lastly, and most importantly, or most dangerously you could say, he's asking us to reconceptualize the role of ethnicity in development. He uses the phrase identity politics much of the time, but what he's actually talking about is ethnicity, people's sort of fundamental identity groups. Along with the other ideas, the idea about democracy, for example, we've got here a dangerous set of ideas, and I give dangerous a sort of positive connotation. These are exactly the kinds of sort of novel ideas which shake up our current conventional wisdoms that we actually need. Let me focus as my sort of third point on this question about ethnicity, and this is one of the areas in which Alina's reading the book and mine are a bit different. It is controversial to suggest that people's basic ethnic identity should be playing a greater role in development and in the formation of states than it does at present. And it's controversial not only because we know that ethnic conflict is always around the corner, but also because the sort of academic world has become accustomed to arguments about how ethnicity is constructed and states and nationalities are constructed. And with each sort of passing decade, we get a new book with a title like The Invention of Tradition, which must have been the 70s, I guess. Imagined Communities in the 80s, the Anderson book about state formation in the West, and Bayard's book of the 80s on the illusion of cultural identity. And these books are all very good books, and they've made some very good points about the fact that identities are not sort of immediately given. They're not something that is sort of biologically passed on. They are things which are actively constructed by people. But I have a feeling that, in fact, there's been so much writing along those lines that we've actually begun to forget that ethnicity is not entirely constructed, or that to the extent it is constructed, it's constructed on the basis of things which are objective, things which are given to us from the past or from facts of geography and so forth. I mean, I'm reminded of the sort of classic remark of Karl Marx about men making their own history but not making it just as they please. Men make their own identities, men construct their own identity politics, they create their own nations, but they don't do it just exactly as they please. They do it on the basis of things which are not changeable in the short term, which are legacies of history. And Seth's argument is bringing that back into the center of the stage and suggesting that if we were more capable of recognizing that fundamental fact, we might be less surprised when things go down the tubes in Iraq following the invasion, the way conflict broke out, the scale on which it broke out in Kenya after the last elections, and so forth. So it seems to me that although there are two sides of this argument about ethnicity and politics, that Seth is giving the corrective, which we probably need at this particular point in world history. Finally, this is my sort of seriously negative point. What I like about the book is that it's encouraging us to do different things, and I like very much the slide on doing things differently. But as Alina said in her comment to me, one of the things that she's been trying to argue with DFID and other donors in recent years is that it's not the case that all good things go together. There are trade-offs. If you want to create a stable society which advances economically, you may have to give something on the democracy promotion front. Agencies in the north which presume to intervene in the south need to be aware that they can't have everything. They do need to make choices. And I think that is really a very strong argument for making those choices in a slightly different way. I worry, though, about his slide number 10, which is about the balanced approach, that seems to take a little bit back to doing a bit of this and a bit of that, and not really sort of annoying anybody by, for example, questioning the role of multi-party elections. So a really good book, I think. I do recommend you all to read it.